Every day, invisible forces are trying to control your mind, not through sci-fi technology, but through something far more powerful: emotional manipulation. What if I told you that the man history labels as the master manipulator actually left behind a secret manual for becoming immune to these very tactics? Machiavelli understood something most people never realize. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about becoming uncontrollable yourself. While everyone focuses on his strategies for domination, they've completely missed his masterclass on mental sovereignty. Here's the brutal truth. Right now, your decisions are being hijacked without you even knowing it. That passing comment from a coworker, the subtle disapproval from a friend, the expectations of society, they're all pulling invisible strings in your mind. The mentally strong aren't born different. They've simply mastered what I call the psychological moat, a protective barrier that filters what influences reach their core. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to build this moat around your mind. By the end of this video, you'll know how to stand firm when everyone wants you to bend, how to see through emotional traps that would normally cloud your judgment, and how to make decisions based on clarity rather than reaction. This isn't about becoming cold or heartless. It's about choosing which emotions serve you and which ones are being intentionally triggered to manipulate you. It's about returning to a state where you control your mind, not the other way around. What I'm about to share has helped CEOs remain calm during company crises, allowed negotiators to keep clear heads in high-stakes situations, and helped ordinary people break free from the prison of caring too much about what others think. The techniques are simple, but their impact is profound. Are you ready to become mentally untouchable? Before I reveal these Machiavellian principles, understand this. Once you see how power truly operates, you cannot unsee it. This knowledge will fundamentally shift how you read people, situations, and the games being played around you every day. If you're not ready for that level of awareness, stop watching now. For everyone else, pay attention to every word. Number 1. The reverse validation protocol. Have you ever noticed how most people make decisions? They have an idea, then immediately ask friends, family, or colleagues what they think. It seems innocent enough, right? But this common habit creates a dangerous vulnerability in your mental fortress. Think about the last major decision you made. Did you first seek outside opinions, or did you trust yourself enough to form your own judgment? For most people, external validation comes first, and that's exactly where the problem begins. When you seek validation before solidifying your own thinking, you're essentially handing over the keys to your mental kingdom. You're telling the world, my thoughts aren't valid until someone else approves them. This single habit is perhaps the greatest weakness in your psychological armor. What if there was a way to completely reverse this process? A method so simple yet so powerful that it could transform how you make every decision for the rest of your life. The truth is, mentally untouchable people don't operate like everyone else. They've discovered something I call the inside-out decision matrix, where internal clarity precedes external input. This isn't about arrogance or ignoring good advice. It's about establishing the proper order of operations for your mind. Imagine having such unshakable confidence in your own judgment that outside opinions become additional data points rather than validation requirements. Imagine making decisions without that nagging voice wondering what others will think. This mental freedom is possible when you implement what I'm about to share. Let me introduce you to technique number 1 of 5, the reverse validation protocol. The reverse validation protocol flips the traditional decision-making process on its head. Instead of seeking validation first, you establish a self-validation ritual where you consciously approve your own choices before exposing them to outside opinions. Here's how it works in practice. When facing any decision, you first enter what I call sovereign thinking mode. Find a quiet space, physical or mental, where you can hear your own thoughts clearly. Ask yourself 3 questions. What do I truly want in this situation? Logically, what feels authentically right to me? Зрение и «если бы никто другой никогда не узнал бы мой выбор, что бы я решил?» Write down your answers. This physical act solidifies your thinking and creates a record of your uncorrupted judgment. This becomes your mental anchor, a position you've established before any outside influence can sway you. Only after completing this ritual do you selectively gather outside perspectives. But here's the crucial difference. You're no longer seeking validation, you're collecting information. Your self-validated decision becomes the standard against which you measure all incoming opinions. When someone offers input that contradicts your initial judgment, you don't automatically bend. Instead, you consciously evaluate. Does this new information genuinely improve my understanding, or is it merely social pressure in disguise? This protocol creates an immunity shield against manipulation because your decisions are already anchored in self-trust before external forces can act upon them. You're no longer easily swayed by disapproval, subtle social cues, or emotional leverage. The most powerful aspect of this technique is how it builds upon itself. Each time you practice self-validation first, your confidence in your own judgment grows stronger. Your mind becomes increasingly resistant to manipulation as you reinforce the pathway of trusting yourself first. Try this with your next 3 decisions, no matter how small. Watch how it gradually transforms not just what you decide, but how mentally untouchable you become in the process. Number 2. The psychological circuit breaker. Technique. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? Or made a decision under pressure that went against your better judgment? If so, you've experienced what psychologists call emotional hijacking, when powerful emotions override your rational thinking systems. This vulnerability is exactly what manipulators target. They know that if they can trigger a strong emotional response, your mental clarity will short-circuit. Once that happens, you become infinitely more susceptible to influence and control. Think about the last time someone made you angry during a disagreement. In that moment of intense emotion, did you maintain complete mental clarity? Or did you find yourself reacting in ways that actually weakened your position? This emotional vulnerability exists in all of us, but it doesn't have to control us. The most sophisticated manipulation tactics aren't designed to convince your rational mind. They're designed to flood your emotional systems, knowing that once they achieve that, your reasoning abilities become compromised. It's like hacking into the control center of your brain through the back door of your emotions. But what if you could install a protection system that automatically detects and disrupts these emotional takeovers before they hijack your thinking? What if you could maintain perfect mental clarity even when surrounded by chaos, pressure, or deliberate attempts to manipulate your emotional state? This brings us to technique number 2 of 5, the psychological circuit breaker technique. Just like electrical circuit breakers protect your home from power surges, psychological circuit breakers protect your mind from emotional surges that would otherwise short-circuit your rational thinking. This technique gives you the power to instantly disrupt emotional hijacking attempts before they can take root. Here's how it works. First, you need to install your circuit breaker by creating a specific physical and mental pattern that you can activate in moments of emotional intensity. Start by selecting a physical anchor. I recommend pressing your thumb against your index finger in a way that creates a noticeable sensation. Next, pair this physical anchor with a specific breathing pattern. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, then exhale for 6. While doing this, silently repeat your circuit breaker phrase. A short statement like, I observe, I don't absorb, or clear mind, strong choice. Practice this complete sequence, physical anchor, breathing pattern, and mental phrase, at least 20 times when you're calm. This creates a neural pathway that you can activate instantly when needed. Now comes the powerful part. The moment you feel an emotional surge beginning, whether it's anger rising during an argument, anxiety during a high-pressure decision, or even subtle manipulation through guilt or flattery, immediately activate your circuit breaker. What happens next is remarkable. The physical sensation interrupts the emotional flood. The breathing pattern physically calms your nervous system, and the mental phrase redirects your attention from emotional reaction to rational observation. In that moment of clarity, you can ask yourself, is this emotion serving my true interests, or is it making me vulnerable to manipulation? Often, you'll recognize that the emotion is actually a Trojan horse, designed to bypass your rational defenses. With consistent practice, this technique becomes automatic. Your mind learns to recognize manipulation attempts through the emotional reactions they trigger, and your circuit breaker activates faster each time. Eventually, you develop what appears to others as an almost supernatural ability to remain clear-headed under conditions that would break most people. Start building this skill today. Notice when emotions begin to rise and practice activating your circuit breaker. With each repetition, you're strengthening your mental sovereignty and making yourself increasingly untouchable to manipulation attempts that rely on emotional hijacking. Number 3. The Machiavellian observer method. Imagine you're watching a chess match between two skilled players. You can see every move, anticipate strategies, and spot potential traps with perfect clarity. Now imagine you're one of those players, deeply immersed in the game. Your perspective narrows, emotions rise, and that perfect clarity diminishes. This difference in perspective reveals one of the most powerful secrets to becoming mentally untouchable. When you're emotionally entangled in a situation, whether it's an argument, negotiation, or any high-stakes interaction, you lose the observer's advantage. You become a player on the emotional chessboard, vulnerable to manipulation and strategic maneuvering by others who might maintain greater detachment. Think about the last heated argument you experienced. While caught in the emotional current, did you say or do things that you later recognized weren't in your best interest? This happens because when we're emotionally engaged as participants, our perspective narrows and our strategic thinking diminishes. What makes this particularly dangerous is that skilled manipulators intentionally work to pull you deeper into emotional entanglement. They know that the more emotionally invested you become, the less clearly you'll see their tactics. It's like being caught in quicksand. The more you struggle within the emotional frame they've created, the deeper you sink into their control. But what if you could maintain the clarity of the observer, even while engaged in life's most emotionally charged situations? What if you could participate in conversations, negotiations, and relationships while simultaneously watching them unfold as if from above? If you're still here, you already think differently. That alone sets you apart. Now, sharpen your edge. Hit subscribe. This is how you stay 10 steps ahead in a world that rewards the silent strategist. This brings us to technique number 3 of 5, the Machiavellian observer method. Despite his reputation for teaching manipulation, Machiavelli himself possessed an extraordinary ability to maintain psychological distance from emotionally charged situations. He understood that the ultimate mental power move isn't controlling others. It's refusing to be controlled by your own emotional reactions. The Machiavellian observer method teaches you to consciously shift from player to observer during heated situations. Instead of being fully immersed in the emotional experience, you mentally step back and watch the interaction as if viewing a movie or chess match. Here's how to implement this technique. When you find yourself in any emotionally charged situation, silently activate what I call the mental periscope. Imagine rising slightly above the scene, creating just enough psychological distance to see both yourself and the other person as characters in a scene. From this vantage point, ask yourself 3 observer questions. What's really happening in this interaction beneath the surface? Logically, what might this person's motivation or strategy be? Logically, and how is my emotional state affecting my responses? This perspective shift doesn't make you cold or unfeeling. Rather, it creates a split awareness. You remain present in the interaction while simultaneously maintaining an observer's clarity about the dynamics at play. The power of this technique becomes apparent when someone attempts to manipulate you emotionally. From the observer's perspective, you can see manipulation attempts with remarkable clarity: the guilt trip, the subtle threat, the false urgency, the strategic flattery. These tactics become almost embarrassingly obvious when viewed from above. With practice, you'll notice something fascinating. The very act of observing your emotions creates space between you and them. You still feel everything, but you're no longer controlled by those feelings. This is the essence of emotional sovereignty. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to experience emotions without being hijacked by them. Begin practicing this technique in low-stakes situations. During ordinary conversations, activate your mental periscope and notice the dynamics at play. Watch how quickly you can shift from being emotionally entangled to observing with clarity. Then gradually apply this skill to more challenging interactions. The ultimate test comes in high emotional situations. When you can maintain the observer's perspective even while feeling intense emotions, you've achieved a level of mental untouchability that few people ever reach. You'll make decisions based on clear perception rather than emotional reaction, and manipulation attempts will lose their power over you. Number 4, the strategic vulnerability approach. There's a dangerous myth about mental strength that actually creates weakness. This myth suggests that to be mentally strong, you must build impenetrable walls around your mind and never allow yourself to be influenced by others. But anyone who studies true psychological power knows this approach ultimately fails. Complete psychological isolation doesn't create strength. It creates fragility. When you build walls too high and too rigid, they eventually crack under pressure. More importantly, those who appear completely invulnerable actually signal to manipulators exactly where to focus their efforts. Think about it. If someone never shows vulnerability in any area, what does a skilled manipulator do? They become obsessed with finding the hidden weak point they know must exist, and when they finally discover it, which they inevitably will, their attack becomes focused and devastating. This reveals a counterintuitive truth about mental untouchability. Strategic vulnerability actually creates greater protection than attempting to be invulnerable everywhere. The most mentally sovereign individuals aren't those who never show weakness. They're those who strategically choose where and when to be influenced. What if instead of trying to build a perfect wall around your entire mental territory, you could create a sophisticated system of gates and drawbridges that you control? What if you could strategically direct influence attempts away from what truly matters by channeling them toward areas where you've chosen to remain flexible? This brings us to technique number 4 of 5, the strategic vulnerability approach. The strategically vulnerable person understands that mental untouchability isn't about becoming an impenetrable fortress. It's about becoming a strategic gatekeeper, deliberately choosing when and where to be influenced while maintaining absolute protection around your core values and decisions. Here's how to implement this approach. First, clearly identify your non-negotiable zones, the values, boundaries, and principles that form the foundation of your authentic self. These areas receive your highest level of protection and remain off-limits to outside influence. Next, identify your flexible zones, areas where you're genuinely open to influence, feedback, and even occasional manipulation. These become your strategic vulnerability points, places where you can channel influence attempts without compromising what truly matters. For example, you might be absolutely firm about your core values but relatively flexible about day-to-day preferences. You might have non-negotiable boundaries around how you're treated but remain open to influence regarding methods and approaches. Now comes the powerful implementation. When faced with attempts to influence or manipulate you, consciously redirect them toward your flexible zones. If someone is pushing for compliance in an area that matters deeply to you, gracefully shift the conversation toward areas where you can comfortably say yes. This creates what I call influence satisfaction, the psychological feeling the other person gets when they believe they've successfully influenced you. By strategically directing this feeling toward areas you've pre-selected, you protect what truly matters while giving others the experience of having impact. The strategic vulnerability approach confuses manipulators by giving them small victories that divert attention from what truly matters to you. It's like a sophisticated martial art, using the momentum of their influence attempts against them by channeling them precisely where you want them to go. This technique requires something that rigid defensiveness doesn't: self-awareness. You must know exactly what matters most to you and what you can comfortably allow to be influenced. This clarity becomes your greatest protection against manipulation. Start implementing this approach by mapping your non-negotiable and flexible zones. Where are you currently rigid when you could be flexible? Where are you currently vulnerable when you should be protected? Adjusting these boundaries is the first step towards strategic vulnerability. With practice, you'll develop what appears to others as a paradoxical quality, being simultaneously approachable and untouchable. You'll become known as someone who listens and can be reasoned with, yet who never compromises on what truly matters. This combination of strength and flexibility is the hallmark of true mental untouchability. Number 5. The Decision Firewall Framework. Every day you make approximately 35,000 decisions. Most are small and unconscious: what to eat, which route to take, how to respond to a message. But scattered among these routine choices are the decisions that shape your life's direction. And it's precisely these high-impact decisions that others most want to influence. Think about the major decisions you've made in the past year. How many were truly yours, and how many were subtly shaped by the opinions, expectations, or manipulations of others? If you're like most people, you'd be uncomfortable with the honest answer to that question. The reality is that decision-making is the ultimate battleground for mental sovereignty. You can have all the mental strength in the world, but if your decision-making process remains vulnerable to outside influence, your actions will still be controlled by others. What makes this particularly challenging is that manipulation rarely announces itself. It doesn't say, "I'm trying to control your decision." Instead, it disguises itself as helpful advice, social wisdom, or emotional pressure that bypasses your logical defenses. But what if you could create a sophisticated protection system specifically designed to shield your decision-making process? What if you had a multi-layered framework that automatically filtered out manipulation and ensured your choices remained authentically yours? This brings us to technique number 5 of 5, the Decision Firewall Framework. Just as a computer firewall protects against unauthorized access to your system, a decision firewall protects against unauthorized influence on your choices. This isn't about becoming closed-minded. It's about ensuring that whatever influences do reach your decision-making process are consciously chosen rather than covertly imposed. Here's how to build your decision firewall. For any significant decision, create 3 distinct layers of protection that every potential influence must pass through before it can impact your choice. The first layer is the authenticity test. When receiving any input about a decision, ask yourself, does this align with my true self and core values? This simple question immediately filters out influences that would lead you away from your authentic path. If advice or pressure contradicts who you truly are, it gets blocked at this first layer. The second layer is the future self consultation. Mentally project yourself into the future and ask, would my best, wisest self approve of this choice? This creates psychological distance from immediate pressures and connects you with your higher wisdom. Manipulation often relies on creating urgency that prevents this longer-term perspective. The third and final layer is the regret minimization filter. For each available option, ask, which choice leads to the least regret? This powerful question cuts through emotional noise and focuses on the long-term consequences of your decision. It's particularly effective against manipulations that use temporary emotions to override your better judgment. What makes this framework so powerful is that it doesn't just protect against external manipulation. It also guards against your own cognitive biases and emotional reactions. It ensures that your decisions remain aligned with your authentic self, even under pressure, urgency, or emotional intensity. To implement the decision firewall framework, create a physical or digital template with these 3 filters clearly laid out. When facing any significant decision, consciously run your options through each layer. Document your reflections to strengthen your commitment to the process. With practice, this framework becomes internalized. Your mind automatically runs important choices through these filters without conscious effort. The result is a decision-making process that remains sovereign under virtually any condition. The ultimate benefit of the decision firewall framework is the deep confidence it creates. When you know your decisions have passed through these 3 filters, you develop an unshakable trust in your choices. External criticism or doubt loses its power because you know your decision wasn't made lightly or impulsively. Start applying this framework today. Choose a pending decision and consciously work it through each layer. Notice how different the process feels from your normal decision-making approach. With each application, you're strengthening your mental sovereignty and making yourself increasingly untouchable to manipulation attempts. You've now learned 5 powerful techniques that Machiavelli and history's most mentally sovereign individuals have used to become truly untouchable. The reverse validation protocol, the psychological circuit breaker technique, the Machiavellian observer method, the strategic vulnerability approach, and the decision firewall framework. Each addresses a different dimension of mental sovereignty. Remember, becoming mentally untouchable isn't about isolation or coldness. It's about conscious choice in what influences you. It's about maintaining clarity even when surrounded by chaos. It's about ensuring that your decisions, emotions, and actions remain authentically yours regardless of external pressure. Start by implementing just 1 technique this week. Notice how it immediately increases your sense of mental freedom and clarity. Then gradually incorporate the others until they become second nature, your personal psychological operating system. The path to mental untouchability is a journey of personal liberation. With each step, you'll find yourself increasingly immune to manipulation, increasingly clear in your thinking, and increasingly powerful in your ability to chart your own course through life. This is Machiavelli's true legacy, not the control of others, but the sovereignty of self. The next video the algorithm chose for you isn't random. It's your next tactical upgrade. Click it now and continue your silent ascent. Those who hesitate lose influence.